Hi, I'm Gayle Ogawa, and I have an English conversation school in Chiba. It's called The English Factory. And I also write a little blog called The Gift of English. I have always asked people who've mastered another language how they did it because I feel they are the ones who really have the best information. So recently I decided to do interviews with these language masters and then post the interviews on my school's YouTube channel so my students and other serious language learners will know exactly what to do to reach their own English speaking goals. And I believe the content in this interview with the popular YouTuber and Manzai comedian nikkuniisan is really going to put English learners on the right path to becoming English speakers. So please watch and please enjoy. This is Nick, an American Manzai comedian living and working in Tokyo. Please be sure to check out Nick's YouTube channel called nikkuniisan and his Twitter account called Time Bomb Gaming. Now, Nick is so fluent in Japanese, he can do manzai comedy. Do you know how hard that is? So how did he get to be so fluent? Does he have a secret superpower? A secret brain hack? Maybe a magic potion? Well, let's ask him. What are the nitty-gritty details of his long journey to fluency? These nitty-gritty details will show the rest of us what we need to be doing to reach our own fluency goals in whatever languages we're learning.
Well, I'm really happy to be here, and I think I'm going to call this interview The Nitty-Gritty of Learning Another Language. I know you've been very successful at it. In fact, I first came across you on a YouTube video. It was a Japanese YouTuber named Takashi.
Mm-hmm. Very nice guy.
Yeah. And he asked you to introduce yourself. And you explained that you are a Japanese manzai comedian.
Yes.
Now, that really got my attention because I realized that it takes such a high level of Japanese proficiency to do that. And then Takashi asked you, what's the best way to learn Japanese? Now that really got my attention because I always listen carefully to the answers people give when asked that question. And you impressed me because your answer was realistic and it was common sense, which I find is often missing in the world of English in Japan. So I got up my guts and I reached out to you, and surprisingly, you graciously allowed me to interview you.
Of course, I always respond.
So as I said, I want to call this the nitty-gritty interview about learning another language.
Let's do it.
I think it's time to dispel so many of the unrealistic expectations that many people have about what it takes to learn a language.
Yeah.
And by actually showing people like a detailed information of what people who did it actually have, how they actually did it day to day, I think it will help people to realize that you don't have any superpowers.
No. I mean, just to make it very clear, like language acquisition, I guess if you have some really high IQ or something like that, that might help out. But if kids can do it, you know, I mean, are you smarter than a kid? Of course, if you're an adult, right? If you can understand this video, you know more than a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. So obviously, if a child can do it, then it doesn't have to do too much with intelligence. That's my opinion.
When did you first start learning Japanese? How old were you?
Okay.
And what programs did you use?
Okay, so I was interested in Japan. The first thing that got me interested was the rock garden in Kyoto called Ryoanji. It's a very famous rock garden, which is a very strange thing for like a 6-year-old to be in. So then I started getting into like Japanese history and anime. So you can tell from the time when I was a little kid, if you're really interested in something, that's basically the only thing that factors whether you will be successful at it or not. Like you can't learn Japanese without being interested in Japan, really,
It's harder.
It's much harder. It's much harder. I mean, that motivation is what keeps you going. And then in high school, I had a math teacher who also actually taught Japanese, and she would just teach us words and stuff in Japanese. Just sweetest girl. I mean, I was a high school student. So now, I'm older than she was when she was teaching me Japanese. At that point, I was totally hooked on Japan, and I actually named my daughter after her because she was the person that I called her up and told her, and she was like bawling her eyes out. It was really funny. But and then I went to university, so I learned the basics. And when I say that, learning the grammar or the word, learning words is very important, and learning the grammar helps, but that's the instruction manual to the language. So that's not actually learning the language, that's reading, the book on how to set your TV up before watching TV.
Okay. When you were in high school, how much time did you actually spend, studying words in Japanese?
Not much, to tell you the truth. So at that point in time, if I didn't have that experience, I probably wouldn't be as good at Japanese as I am now. But I was just a high school student, so that, it was like...
Well, what level would you say? Would you be able to pass the Japanese basic level?
No
it's just
way.
A scattered
no way. I could say my name is Nick, I like coffee or something like that. That was about, stuff like that. Yeah, and then I went in, and I guess I should say I did learn hiragana and katakana, which...
So did you try to read the manga in...
No.
Okay.
No. So that was much later. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in high school, basically, it was just a few words.
Yeah, and I was lucky to be in Berkeley, California, which is kind of a funky place where you would be able to learn Japanese. Like, I can imagine maybe...
There are people there.
Yeah. I can imagine there's probably other places in America would be harder to have that access, right?
Well, did you watch manga in English or in Japanese?
English.
Okay.
So at that point, I was still watching it in English.
Okay.
Yeah. It got more serious in college when because I didn't want to go to college. I remember having the conversation with my mom, and somehow she convinced me, but I said then I was going to learn Japanese studies.
Okay.
Where
did you go to college?
I went to the University of San Francisco, which was an amazing school. Like, it was perfect. I couldn't ask for a better university. The staff were just amazing. The Japanese
staff?
Yeah, just unbelievable. So I had all these amazing resources. Japantown is close by. It was just a really good program, I mean...
Well, in that way, what made it good?
Well, first off, there was a balance between actual Japanese professors and foreign professors that were interested in Japan. So you kind of get two types of viewpoints. Like, if it was just Japanese people, then you just get the Japanese viewpoint. But, I mean, the teachers were like my friends, like if I...
But this was mainly not only learning Japanese language, but this was learning everything about
Japan.
Okay.
So that was just another, how can I say, like a setup for how I was going to learn Japanese in the future at that point. Like, I was studying, but of course I couldn't speak Japanese either, really. So...
Well, how were your actual Japanese courses at school, and how helpful were they? Like, what did you actually do in the Japanese language courses?
Okay, so it's basically use the standard textbooks, and I don't want to like badmouth the university, but it's just how everybody learns every language. It's textbook. So, as I said, that's not... For me, actually learning the language, that's like learning the
rules of the language.
The rules of the language. So that's what I learned there. It reinforced the rules of the language. The one thing I could say that I think they need to get rid of is writing kanji, as no Japanese people write kanji either. It's become obsolete. So
especially if you're learning it as a second language, you just don't have the time to invest in it.
So if you read it, that's totally fine. But writing takes away from all the other important things like pronunciation or listening, for instance. Like, you end up studying the kanji more than everything else, and it's the least important because I've learned the kanji naturally just living in Japan.
And in context.
Exactly. So from watching
conversations.
Things. Yeah. So, I mean, if I asked Takashi to write a little essay in Japanese, he'd have trouble writing the kanji because people just don't really, I mean, you type it in emails, online, or messages, I should say. It's maybe a good skill for Japanese people for their memorization, right? When they're little kids. But as somebody studying Japanese, I think it was...
I agree. I think that with the technology today, that you're losing so much time, because when you're a university student, you couldn't just focus on Japanese language. You had many other things to do.
Yes.
So it actually took away from your ability to practice the speaking aspect and communication, when it just was a hindrance.
Exactly. Yeah.
What textbooks did you use? And was it basically it's the ones that we all know?
It's the ones you all know, like Genki. I don't remember. It's so unimportant to me that I don't even remember that.
So basically the teachers, would they speak in English or would they speak in Japanese? And what % of the time would they use English and what % of the time would they use Japanese?
In the beginning, they spoke in English. And then by intermediate, it's all in Japanese, which is amazing, right? And when you're a student, you don't get that that's the most important thing that they're doing in the class. To you, it's annoying because you want to get the explanations in English.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, okay, that was probably the best thing they could have done.
So in the actual classes, how much time did you and the other students have to actually communicate in Japanese?
Not much. It was mostly learning grammar or writing. It was kind of in between. Now there's so many digital
devices
that you can use. That was like the beginning of it. Yeah. So everything wasn't that great yet.
Yeah.
You know?
So I came to Japan when there was nothing.
Yeah.
And you had to count the strokes of a kanji to look it up in the dictionary. So it'd take me 20 minutes to look up one kanji.
Just a nightmare. Yeah. So yeah, that was university.
Now, how important was that to you when you, what level, when you came to Japan for, skipping ahead here, you came to Japan for your master's degree?
I came here as an exchange student first. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, so your third year?
Yeah, my third year. And then before master's, I actually went to a Japanese school here too.
Okay, so you did a Japanese school plus an exchange program.
Yes. The Japanese school wasn't very long.
Was it intense?
It was very intense. And by that time, I had been spending so much time with Japanese people, like just friends I made, that my Japanese was better than most.
Okay, because you had the interest, and when you came to Japan,
I had the knowledge.
Instead of hanging out with all the foreigners,
I was hanging out with the Japanese people. Yes,
people.
Exactly.
When you went to the Japanese school, how old were you? Was that after college?
Yeah, I must have been 20, maybe 21. Yeah.
And then, how long was that course? And then how many hours a day did you actually do the class? And then did you have homework?
So the course was maybe almost a year, or maybe
That's a Japanese language
course.
The
Japanese language course. And it was 6 hours a day of class and maybe 2 hours a day of homework. So
that's quite intense.
Quite intense.
But was the method that they used, in your opinion, really useful?
The method wasn't useful, but they didn't speak any English in the school. They didn't know. There was not one person. That was a strong point. And then the other thing was, it was 95% Chinese students who already, it's an Asian language, they know the kanji. So I'm angry that they can do so much better than me, which motivated me to work really hard. So that was actually, I always tell people, that was one of the biggest motivations, that it was so easy for the Chinese students.
Yeah, I know. They come over here and in a year they're speaking fluent Japanese.
They pass the test to get into good universities, it's amazing.
I know. Because they already have all that kanji behind them, so they can intuit the when they're reading something, they know what it means.
Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing.
So when you're out with friends, at that time, what was that important for learning the daily life and?
Yeah, because the things you learn in textbook aren't what people speak in daily life. Yeah. But by that time, I've always thought it's really good to mimic people. And I think at that point, now I talk...
Oh, this is important. Okay, mimicking people. What do you mean by that?
Just by when they say something, you remember what they said and make that your arsenal. You add it to your arsenal of phrases. All right. Yeah.
So you would be out with your friends and you would mimic them. So you were very conscious about what people were saying to you, and you really... rather than just passively learning, you were listening with intent.
Listening with intent, because I wanted to sound like them.
Okay.
So none of this is I actually never had the goal, like, I want to be fluent in Japanese. Like, that wasn't necessarily my goal, but I wanted to sound cool. I wanted to sound hip. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like...
You wanted to be one of them.
Yeah, I wanted to be one of them. And I was lucky to have this group of friends who I'm still friends with. It's been like 15 or maybe 17, 18 years. So I'm still friends with. We still meet up and stuff like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
And then you were an exchange student.
So I went to...
let me ask you one more question.
Sure.
How important was alcohol in all of this?
It was actually very important. I actually don't drink that much, to tell you the truth. But it was a bar that we always met at. So that was the place outside of school. And I've said this on other videos too. While everybody was studying, trying to pass these tests in school, I was at this bar not studying with these people. But my Japanese got so much better than everybody else's Japanese.
So it wasn't necessarily the drinking, but it was the environment of actually being at actual real Japanese rather than because that was studying.
Yes.
And you did it with intent. So actually what we're looking at here is what the other students were doing was ineffective. What you were doing was effective.
Exactly.
And more fun.
Exactly. And it's been proven. I mean, not been proven, but I mean, there's been linguists who say, it's impossible to acquire a language that you're not having fun learning. That's why everybody learns dirty words first, because they're the fun ones to learn. Why do you remember those and not all the other important words?
Oh, I know. So dirty words definitely get people's attention.
And same with just colloquial Japanese, because it sounds cool. You think it's cool. So,
so that was important to you.
Because I must say, I came here with a guy who was much smarter than me. Genius level, like he's like a patent lawyer now. He should have been better at Japanese than me, but
according to what people
would say, but my Japanese,
according to the misconceptions we have.
Yes, exactly. And as I said before in other videos, like grammar is actually not a thing. It's language is a thing, and then linguists try to create the grammar, try to find these patterns. So you're basically studying something that isn't the original source. The original source is just people talking with each other.
Okay. When you came for the exchange, as an exchange student, how was that experience?
So that experience was just me basically not studying and
having a good time in Tokyo?
having a good time in Tokyo, but my Japanese got so good. Yeah.
Okay. And that was, did you go to class? And were your classes in?
Yeah. I went to every class. I never skipped classes, but I didn't care, really, to say the truth.
And
also, Japanese university is super easy compared to the States. So
people don't realize that.
Yeah, it's just
Can
ridiculous.
you explain something about that?
I mean, it's just totally like sad to say. I mean, grad school was hard, but undergrad was a joke. It was just like, do whatever you want. I think it's a time for socialization for Japanese students because they study so hard in high school. So that's basically what I did.
Well, I think, they do and they don't. They go to the cram schools. It depends on the schools that Japanese kids go to.
Yeah.
In my experience of talking to kids, to college students, is that the professors don't even check your papers.
No.
They ask you to write a report. They don't even check it. So, but you did spend time. It wasn't like you were not doing anything. You were actively involving yourself with Japanese people and speaking Japanese.
Exactly.
So that is really important. A lot of people come here and they don't do that.
Exactly.
And so it's not like you weren't doing anything.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was, I mean, I wasn't just like messing around.
Did you always look up words when you were?
Yes. And I love Japan, and I did not want to go back to the States. So I had to go back, study here for 1 year, go back immediately after I graduate, come here, study at the Japanese school, as I said, because I wanted to get into a school here. So I needed to get to a proficiency level of, it's tests. So it's not real proficiency. It's test proficiency. Yeah, which I did pass by like 1 point. It was really funny. I can't believe it was hilarious. So I got college level Japanese or maybe high school level Japanese. It was like N2. It wasn't the N1.
Okay.
I think N1 you need for jobs and N2 you need for universities or stuff like that. And so I went to language school. I mean, I've been here for 16 years and I still haven't gotten tired of it yet. So
explain the difference between what you said, the proficient, being able to actually use real Japanese in everyday life, and then what's on the test.
Sure. Well, I mean, you could just use the example of Japanese people who have a TOEIC score of 900 but can't even speak with an American or, somebody who speaks English. Testing is not acquisition. It's a totally different thing. Testing is to test you, to see if you can go through the loops that they've created or the traps that they've created for you. It's a necessary thing in some ways, right? Because you can't just let everybody into a school, you can't let everybody into a job. But I never got, there's the N1 Japanese proficiency test, right? And I've never needed it for a job. I think I have it too, but I've never even pulled it out because I always just go into the interview and speak perfect Japanese, and they're like, we don't need, we don't need. So if there's any Japanese people watching this, actually learn how to speak English first, because then you could do the test later.
I always tell my students that. I said, if you want to know if you have a high level of English, watch an American movie. And if you understand 90% of it, you're fine.
Exactly. So this test thing it's a necessity, but it's very silly. So
I think we should change the testing.
Oh, of course.
We need to make a different kind of testing that would allow people that when they do invest time into preparing for the test, they actually get to keep all of that knowledge after they're tested. The preparation for the test is actually useful to them.
Well, my mentor, who I should introduce to you, his name is Yasuko Sensei. He's probably the most famous English teacher in Japan. Speaks fluent English, hilarious guy, and he worked for the government and had really tried to change the test a couple years ago, and it didn't go through, and he was just devastated by it because he's been trying to change it. A lot of people get pissed at him in Japan because he's like, I don't care about this. I care about if you could speak and if you can listen, but so many people want to keep it. Yeah. Okay. Amazing, nice guy. Yeah.
How was your experience in the master's program at Sofia?
Yeah. So Sofia, and I said the undergrad was a joke. It's actually an amazing school. The library is just unbelievable. Grad school was really cool, and I had already been doing comedy at that point, but I wanted to do something more because I was like, if I just put all my eggs in this comedy basket, I might not have anything.
You have a lot of common sense.
Yeah, so I did, and I actually got into the school because I'm a comedian. Everything was on.
So you were already doing.
I was already professional on TV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you did that in college, undergraduate.
Right after undergraduate, so after the Japanese school, I got into this comedy boot camp, which was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was so many students at first, and by the end of the year, there was like 7 left because you're getting yelled at. A lot of hazing. It's a very strict industry, and they want you they want the people that can't take it to fail as fast as possible. And I'm really good with negative reinforcement for some reason. A lot of people are bad at it, but for some reason I can handle it.
Negative reinforcement.
I can handle it. So the comedy school, should we say that first just because that was before grad? Yeah. So I got into this comedy school. It's a 2-year program, and I'm listening to these young 18-year-old Japanese funny guys, and we would get to work with famous people too.
Oh, wow.
So I'm listening, and I couldn't speak barely at this point. I mean, a comedian is able to speak and make jokes, and
the comedians are some of the smartest people.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these guys just graduated middle school too. It's like.
But they're so clever.
Yeah,
they're observant.
Yeah, very observant. So imagine me being in a room with people who are like masters with language, and me listening because they didn't force me to speak. So for a whole year, I didn't perform. I just listened.
Oh, wow.
8 hours a day, every day.
Okay. And with intent.
With intent.
Did you get space out sometimes?
Oh, yeah. And it was so above my level that, but I think I have, I think my mom was too nice to me, so I had all this confidence in myself that mothers are like always treat you special. So I kept thinking I'm special. I'm going to get this one day. But that really worked to my advantage because I just stuck with.
Yeah, I'm still special, and so it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen at some point. So listening every single day to these funny guys, and then the second year I was like, okay, I want to start performing, and I started performing. Part of it had to do with me being an American, and it was something new, but we got on to this really big joke contest. So in Japan, if you want to get famous, you have to get onto these joke contests. We got to the finals. There was 1,000 people, and I think 4 of us got on.
Wow.
So we were still students at this time, and we started going on TV. I joined a professional company and did just comedy for a couple of years, which is very brutal. It's not a lot of money. It's actually almost no money, but it was a really good experience. Number 1, to learn Japanese culture. Number 2, to just listen to funny people. Also, there's a really cool thing about Japanese society, and an uncool thing is the kohai senpai thing.
Oh, I know all about that. Yeah.
So the good thing is I'm not going to say his name, but like one of the most famous comedians in Japan who really liked me, and he was like, you're going to hang out with me every single day. So I'm hanging out with this
very famous comedian.
guy every day, and it's just like I'm absorbing all of his...
And was he like a mentor? Like
no.
He just liked to be with you?
He's the type of senpai that likes to have 4 kohai with... He's married and has a kid, but we're at his house till 2 a.m. every morning, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how it is. And in Japan, when you're a kohai and you're not making money, the senpai have to pay everything for you. So you go out to dinner, they pay for you. But on the other side, if they call you at 3:30 in the morning, come over to my house, you have to go to their house.
Okay.
So
it's a very interesting arrangement.
But it's almost like having a parent, right? So just as a child will learn like a language from a parent who's their boss, you have this senpai that's...
How do you think that benefited you?
Well, it was just, even today, my style of humor, even when I try not to be like that, everybody's like, oh, you remind me of this guy. Because that's just what I was... Because I'd be watching TV, so I'm watching Japanese TV with him, and he's making fun of the people on TV. So I'm just, like, his humor and Japanese wording and all that stuff is going into my head.
Okay.
And besides this, when you're writing manzai jokes, which mostly my partner wrote, I'm reading the Japanese, I'm listening to him tell me what to do, and then I'm speaking it. So it's like, there's nothing better than that for learning a language, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it happens, yeah.
So I've actually many times thought there needs to be a Japanese comedy school for foreigners in Japan to learn Japanese, because I think it's like language, who speaks better, a teacher or like a comedian?
Well, yeah, like I said, if you're going to be funny, you have to know what everybody's thinking and every aspect of their life, what ticks them off, what gives them pleasure,
exactly.
And that's a very intimate relationship with a culture.
Exactly. So, I mean, that was...
And then the language goes with that.
Yeah, and I was on TV like a lot for about a year. It was maybe 2012 or 2013. Oh. And I can't say it was a very good experience. I can't say the entertainment industry has been a good experience. I've actually turned down almost every TV job I've gotten since. I had some TV shows that I've been on for years, and then this year was the first year I don't have any. But my manager called me, because he called me maybe 6 months ago and was like, can you go on this TV show? And I was like, I don't want to go on like TV shows. And he was like, Nick, do you feel like everything you've done in the entertainment industry has been negative? Do you feel like you've learned anything from it? And I was like, well, I learned how to talk really well. And he was like, exactly. So why don't you just like maybe take some jobs, like, because you obviously got something out of this. I wouldn't be an English teacher or successful like I am today if I hadn't done comedy. Wow. Even with the big English company I worked for, I was on a TV show for 6 years with that famous English teacher. And he was like, Nick, you have a master's, you speak really good Japanese, you're funny, why don't you just try to work for my company? So he invited me to his company, and then my English career kind of took off. So it's all because of the comedy that this happened.
But it's all because, too, I think, the effort that you put into learning Japanese, that just shows that you have this incredible stick-to-itness. You have the ability to complete something,
yes,
and that you're willing to work hard to get what you want, and people can trust you.
And I don't know if this is the best metaphor or the best method, but my method of learning a language, which I always imagine, is I'm Genghis Khan, and I have a bigger army than I always imagine Japanese is. The opposing army. So I'm fighting Japanese.
Japanese language.
The Japanese language, not the Japanese people, the Japanese language. And the Japanese language has a very small army, but mine is huge. But I'm willing to let my soldiers just die because I have so many people. So if I just keep sending soldiers over, at some point I'm going to take over the Japanese language. And that's how I think of it. Like, it's not...
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's a good metaphor.
That's my metaphor for learning a language.
That's very
basically
funny.
a metaphor for not giving up. You know what I mean? Like,
okay. If I just keep at it, if I just keep sending my attention, my time, I'm gonna beat them.
Exactly.
That's really funny.
That's my method.
So the what I've got out of this about the nitty gritty of what you did was it was this everyday grind, everyday attention, and not giving up.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, I never had this, I think this is actually a very Japanese thing, which is the reason why many Japanese people can't speak English. They want to know things that they can't, let me explain. Say they're watching an English movie, and there's, like, things that come up every minute that they don't understand. They'll stop it and look it up. Stop it and look it up. When you could have just let it go. Just keep, like, the more hours you put into watching, the more you're gonna...
okay.
So I'm willing to not try to understand
You're willing not to pause.
Yes.
You're
So
willing
I never
not to push pause and to let it go because you know that eventually you're going to hear that same phrase.
In context.
Again and again in other things.
Exactly. And that's how it worked.
Yeah. But you do pay attention.
Yes, I do pay attention.
I don't understand that, but I will one day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So I'm willing to not pause. That's probably the biggest advantage that I've had.
All right. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
I wanted to divide the interview into 3 parts.
Sure.
And we're a little pressed for time. So I think let's go to the last part.
Okay.
Which was a miracle happens and suddenly Nick is the king of Japanese education, English education. What would you do? Okay.
The first thing I would do would be to get rid of English as one of the criteria to get into college, because if you don't want to learn English, don't learn English. It's like, why do you have to?
So totally agree.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I would first offer like 10 languages so people can choose. Because by the way, I'm learning Spanish now, but I wasn't interested in it when I was a kid, and I never learned anything because I wasn't interested in it. So what was the point of sending me to Spanish for elementary school to high school? You know what I mean? Like, I was lucky to have Japanese that I could learn. So first off, mandatory English, no. Number 2, get rid of every English class you have from hoikuen all the way to, what's hoikuen? Daycare, all the way to the end of high school. 1 to 2 hours a day of watching Netflix or movies in English, and I guarantee you that the high school graduates would be fluent in English.
Much more.
Yeah. You could also introduce like eikaiwa maybe in high school or something like that, but the most important thing is input it first. If you try to speak too early, it's confusing because you don't have any knowledge to like...
Yeah, I did an interview with a girl from Mongolia. Her parents are Mongolian, and they came to Japan to work in the IT industry, and their daughter grew up on English videos and Mongolian, and then at 3 years old they moved to Japan, and when she was from 0 to 3, it was only English videos at home, and then conversation with the family was always in Mongolian, and then from 3 years old she went into Japanese daycare, and that's where she started learning Japanese. Then I asked her in the interview, how was it learning English? Was there a point where you actually realized you were speaking another language? She said, no, it kind of just all was the same. And she said, English and Mongolian, it kind of just happened. But I said, how about Japanese? That was at 3 years old, no previous experience with Japanese, thrown into a Japanese daycare. And then she said, oh yeah, that was kicking, screaming, really difficult at 3 years old.
Yeah.
But if you start from 0, then it was just smooth sailing. And I think with the brothers that you interviewed, the little 3 brothers, it's just a very natural thing.
Well, you don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Like my kids have been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a martial art since they were like 2, every Sunday. So Sunday for them is
I don't think people know you have kids.
Yeah, I have 3. So, 3 kids. And they do jiu-jitsu every Sunday. They don't know a Sunday that's not jiu-jitsu. Like, that's just this Sunday is a jiu-jitsu day. Yeah. So it's like, I don't even have, it's really bad to force people to do stuff, but you can trick them into thinking that that's the only thing there is.
This is life.
Yeah.
The sun comes up in the east, it sets in the west, and jiu-jitsu is Sunday.
Jiu-jitsu is Sunday. So I think that's a really important thing. And when you ask any Japanese person who's fluent in English, like, why can you speak English? 90% of them will be like, I don't know, my parents just made me watch Disney movies when I was a little kid.
Yes.
You know, it's like...
Yeah. I sound the same thing.
It's It's so
It's crazy.
simple. I went to Europe this year with the guy who I do YouTube with.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, and we interviewed different countries, people from different countries who could speak English and not, like France, Holland, Italy, stuff like that. All the small countries, the people speak basically fluent, perfect English, and all the big countries don't. And the reason was so simple. It was the big countries have gigantic TV stations to where they have their own shows. Whereas
In their own language.
Yeah, where Holland doesn't. So they're just stuck with English shows. So now they all speak English. It's like, that's all. I mean, but just imagine the amount of money people lose from something like that, including me.
Yeah.
I always say, I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I could sell you more stuff if I didn't, you know.
No.
Yeah.
I just read an article yesterday that said that Taiwan is mandated that everybody's going to be bilingual. It's going to be a bilingual country.
That's amazing.
By 2030.
That's amazing.
And it's totally possible with the technology that exists today.
Yeah.
Well, before we finish, I really want to go into your own personal program. It's called Immersion.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Immersion.
I don't think many people know that. Do you know?
Yeah.
His own.
You've
designed your own materials.
Yes. So 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago in February, I started studying Spanish because I wanted to do the exact same thing I did with Japanese, but without any of the unnecessary parts.
Okay. Now you want to streamline your process.
Yes. So I've recorded every single day exactly what I did, and it's changed throughout these 2 years. Basically, to put it very simply, is I just listen to Spanish for an hour to 3 hours every single day. Every single day. And it starts with like children's very simple, very easy content like Pokemon or something like that. Because input.
Would you start like with Spanish videos that were made for Spanish kids to learn the alphabet and Spanish colors?
Yes, and there's an actual amazing website of a guy who I really respect. I really respect this linguist named Stephen Crescent, who is into comprehensive.
Oh, say his name again.
Yeah, Stephen Crescent. So Stephen Crescent, he was a linguist, and his main theory was called comprehensible input, which means to watch content that you understand at least a little bit of. Mm-hmm. So if, in the case of a Japanese person learning English, you would watch Sesame Street or a very simple, easy show, just like parents, when they're talking to a 2-year-old, would say, cup, cup, cup. And if you say that to a 2-year-old 100 times, they're going to understand the word cup, Yeah. So that's basically how I kind of started my method, which is I watch things in Spanish because I'm immersing in Spanish now. I watch very easy children's shows, and there's an amazing website where they have like 1,000 videos that range from like baby style talking all the way to like college level.
Okay, this is Spanish learning.
A Spanish learning. It's amazing. So I was like, wow, I should do something like that, but in English for Japanese people. And that's how I started my company, Chads, which is basically focusing on listening and watching things in English, which for some reason is the most difficult thing for Japanese people, even though it's the easiest thing.
Yeah, it's so difficult for them to accept the fact that that's all they have to do, and there's no test involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
And there's no like 5-color pens where they can write like different notes in their notebook. It's like, learning the grammar does make things easier, but it's not that necessary. So sure. So I'm not teaching English to you. This is for adults. I'm teaching you how to teach English to yourself, which
is very important.
Yes, which just means how to watch content and actually learn from the content. So don't just put it on. People can watch English content their whole lives and then not learn anything if they don't try to learn.
I've been living in Japan a long time. I'll tell you, just living here doesn't turn you into a Japanese speaker.
Exactly. And then the other thing is there's these insane technologies now. Have you heard of like these SRS applications? So it's called SRS, Space Repetition Software.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I know that.
So it's a very speedy way to acquire words because it's like flashcards, except it can measure when to refeed you the card, depending on how fast you...
Okay. It goes with your brain.
It goes with your brain. Yeah. So it's just this, Immersion plus an SRS application is just a very speedy way to learn language, and I don't do any grammar. Not because I don't think grammar is important, but number one, because all Japanese people already learn grammar.
There's already a million people explaining it online.
And then, as you were talking about a second ago, grammar comes after. I never learned grammar. I learned how to speak, and then, I mean, actually, I didn't learn grammar ever, and I think grammar had already been removed from English education by the time I was a child.
Really?
Yeah. I never learned English grammar. I don't think they teach English grammar now.
They do in some states.
Yeah, maybe in some states.
In America, the education is state by state, and some states have they can do what they want.
Yeah, but the thing is, even if you don't learn grammar, you learn how to speak, which is the main thing that you want to do. So, basically, my program is three different pillars. One is input, immersion, watching and listening to English. The second is when to start speaking and writing, because you don't just start speaking. The problem with Japanese people is they either study forever, they study grammar forever, like for 10 years and don't learn, or they immediately go to eikaiwa with absolutely no English knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, before you speak, I mean, if you want to drink water, you have to pour water first into the cup before drinking the water.
Yeah. Well, right now, because of the technology, that's possible. Like when I started teaching eikaiwa like 100 years ago, and that wasn't possible. That people didn't have the resources back then to get the input, and now they do.
Even when I was in college, they didn't have YouTube. They didn't have a trillion videos in Japanese on YouTube. Yeah. You know, like if you wanted to immerse when I was in college, you had to go to Japan. You know,
and hang out with Japanese people.
Yes, exactly. Now you don't have to do that. You just be in your house and watch Japanese TV shows all day, learn Japanese culture, and learn the language. It's like the easiest time to learn a language is now.
Yeah. Well, how do people find your program, and how long is it, and how does it work? Like, what's the actual way that people would sign up for it?
Sure. So it's chads4.com, and I have three basic three courses right now. One is called Foundations, and it's a roadmap of how to learn English. The second is called Sparta Immersion, and I named it Sparta Immersion because it's not easy. It takes 3 hours of your day every single day for a month. So
I think that's one reason I looked at that when I was checking you out on after I saw your initial interview. I said, Sparta. That's exactly the right word.
Yeah. Well, in it, I also don't lie and say you'll learn You know, if you go on Instagram or YouTube, like learn Japanese in 2 months and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we're going to teach you everything you need to know in 3 months. Just buy this book.
8 years. I think that's a pretty good amount of time it takes. 8 years. So I always say, I do jiu-jitsu. If you want to get a black belt, that's 20 years. You know, if you could get a black belt in a year, everybody would have a black belt. If English or learning a language was easy,
everybody would already be speaking English.
Exactly. So if you really want to learn English, so this was for people that really want to learn. It's not to teach them English, it's to put them in the routine of my weird, insane person routine of, I'm not going to watch anything but Spanish for 2 years, which I'm doing. So, and I'm not this highly intelligent guy. If I can do it, literally anybody can do it because it's not an intelligence thing, you know.
Well, I think you're pretty smart to figure all this out. A lot of people haven't.
Yeah, but it's just trial and error, basically. You know what I mean? So it's not like math. It's not like, you know, it's a very natural process. The way I tell you to learn English is how we've been talking about, like they hear the words from their parents.
And they hear it many times.
Exactly. And no tests or anything like that. So to put you in this crazy routine is why I created
Well,
that.
I'll put a link to
that'd
your
be amazing.
website.
Yeah. I want to create one for children at one day. Or parents.
Mine.
Yeah, I should. Yeah. Maybe we could do something together one time because it's crazy how Japanese parents could make their children fluent in English, but none of them do.
It's not as hard as people think if you start from zero.
Exactly.
I just finished an interview, or tomorrow I'm going to interview one of my students, and it's all about the role that parents play in learning English with their kids. The parents actually are the key. And
exactly.
I have a blog called The Gift of English, and it's like giving a gift to your child. Another language. And if you do it if the parents do it consistently from as soon as a child is born, the child doesn't have to make any effort whatsoever to learn the language. You can put as many languages in there as you want. It's the one thing that parents have complete control over.
Well, also,
you can't control their personality. You can't control their intelligence or their
interests and stuff like that.
Height and their weight, and if they're handsome or beautiful. But the language is what they 100% inherit from their parents.
The other thing is you could kill two birds with one stone and learn the language with your child. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're just putting on English content for your child every day, why don't you just learn it yourself too?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
As I said before, I interviewed those three brothers, you know, the Japanese brothers whose parents do speak a little bit of English, but not like those kids. All it had to do was with them showing those kids only English content. That's all it was.
And my student named my former student named Zaya, speaks 3 languages fluently, and English was all from YouTube.
Yep. It's the best.
She never met a foreigner until she met me at the age of 7.
Wow.
And she was telling me knock-knock jokes.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Yeah,
It's
But the parents did. Here's the rub, though. Here's the tricky part. Zaya's mom, I interviewed her too, and she said, you never leave children alone in front of a screen. You always have to be aware of their content, and they would carefully choose what they were watching. She said no nonsense kind of shows. You know, it had to be shows where there were people speaking in English, and there was a relationship between the words and the pictures. So the parents would let them watch freely up to a point.
Yes.
But the parents used common sense.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Insanely simple. It's just, can you let your army keep fighting the other language? That's basically really all it is. Yeah. Thank you so much.
But with kids, they don't even have to fight the language. Yeah. There's no fight.
Exactly. And one thing you said about learning from zero, the reason it's easier for kids is, number one, obviously they can connect, you know, brain, whatever they're called.
They're neurons.
Neurons, stuff like that. The other thing is they don't have any bias from other languages. So me learning Spanish, I'm sometimes will like think in Japanese, because Japanese was the second language I learned. So that's why you should teach it to your kid as fast as possible, because the least amount of language biases that they have, the faster they're gonna remember the stuff. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you so much
today.
for having me.
No, you had me here to
and
get
she made these
student.
amazing brownies and cookies. Yeah.
Well, that's what you get for inviting a grandma to do an interview.
It was really good.
And good luck with all that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.